by way of background, I started Branchfood and Branch Venture Group, which have become, I think for me, like I so identify with what I do today, which has been really a tremendous life experience. I've had other jobs in the past, and I haven't quite had that alignment, and sacrifices have been made, more opportunities have been had, but it's really been just a pleasure kind of discovering this for myself, and I think has given me so much just personal like assurance, confidence, and I think entrepreneurship can be a really positive thing for people who have the craziness to pursue it, I suppose. But in terms of my background, I grew up in Pennsylvania. I was born into a family that had a lot of Lebanese influence. My dad is Lebanese. Growing up, our food and what we ate was always a little bit more unique than the folks around me. I grew up with a lot of Italian cuisine and Irish cuisine and Polish cuisine. Tends to be the ethnicities that are in numbers in Scranton, Pennsylvania. But food was always kind of a unique thing in my life, and it wasn't until I was about 16 that my mom's mom, my grandmother, was diagnosed with leukemia. I think for so many entrepreneurs, there's this like kind of pivotal moment in their life where they realize like, oh, this is a really unique, not a unique opportunity, but a point in time that makes you feel really present. And I think a lot can be gained from that moment. And so she was diagnosed with leukemia. At the time, my mom quit her job to help care for her. She went out to the West Coast to learn how to treat disease with plant-based diets, and got really inspired by a lot of books that she was reading on the topic of food and health. At the time, I was trying to decide what I wanted to study in college, and so always really liked science and felt like food was a natural interest, both related to what happened with my family, but also our heritage. And so decided to study food science. I went on to study food policy. I did my undergrad at the University of Vermont and my graduate work at Tufts in Boston. And being in Boston, I think, influenced the rest of my life. Despite the fact that the program was only 2 years, I didn't really know what I wanted to do afterwards. I took an internship with Techstars, which at the time was, I think, only maybe about 2 years old. So it was like the second year in Boston that it was happening. And Katie Ray was the managing director. It was her first year being a managing director of the program. And she's gone on to do such amazing things in support of the Boston food community. It's been a pleasure to see her kind of journey from afar. But the accelerator for me was really an opportunity, and I was just interning there. I didn't join with another company, but it was really my first exposure to entrepreneurship and innovation as a way to affect change. And it felt like so much of what I was learning in grad school was, the flaws of our food system and the things that were going wrong. And I had this really, strong family experience of the way food can influence health. And so, really was just kind of enamored by the idea of business and idea creation and product creation as a way to influence an industry. And a lot of the companies that were going through Techstars at the time were very focused on tech and more like biotech or kind of life sciences. But I was inspired by what those folks were doing. And so that was the second year of my grad program that I took that internship. So I didn't end up pursuing entrepreneurship right off the bat. Actually, when I graduated, I went to work for the World Trade Organization. And so that was in Geneva, Switzerland. I was writing reports on international food safety development in some of the WTO's member countries, but just kept having this feeling of like, I have to get back to Boston. Like, I loved Switzerland, don't get me wrong. The chocolate, the views, the food was amazing too. But I just had this, I had this draw, I think, to coming back to the city and doing something and starting something. And I didn't know what it was, but I just had this, kind of get these like gut feelings in life. And that was a really strong one for me. So I moved back to Boston at the beginning of 2013, got a job with a tech company that was building email software to pay my bills. And I started a meetup group on meetup.com. I'm sure you're all familiar with the platform. I think it was a lot more popular years ago than it is today, but it was a small way to start experimenting with running something of my own, and really just bringing people together around the idea of food and entrepreneurship. Ideally, I would have, I think, gotten a job in food, but I didn't really know where to look and who was hiring, and I didn't know any food startups at the time. And so I felt like the group was an opportunity for me to network with people that hopefully could end up hiring me, but really took on a life of its own. And so ran the group alongside some paying jobs that I had in tech. I worked for a venture fund briefly called Salt Venture Partners. I worked for a publisher, helping him launch a food community with his contacts. I did a whole bunch of other things. I think I had like 4 jobs at one point, and just said, "Okay, Lauren, let's not take stock of your life and your choices." And so the group was growing all along, and we were doing more sophisticated events, and we were creating these partnerships, and I was not making any money from the group, but it was so energy giving that I wanted to keep doing it despite the fact that I had all these other jobs, and ended up basically putting together 3 events over the course of spring. What year? Probably 2016. And those events were paid for events, and so I felt like I could successfully do these paid for events, had some money saved up. That could be kind of my own launching point into maybe focusing on this group and what ended up being termed Branchfood more full time. And so I took the leap of faith. I left my job. I did those 3 events. I made enough money to take me 6 months ahead into the future. I didn't know what was going to happen after those 6 months, but that was now 6 years ago, and I've been working for myself and building Branchfood and now Branch Venture Group ever since. And so fast forward to today, Branchfood is the largest community of food entrepreneurs and innovators in New England. We work to support that community in a couple of different ways. We have a shared workspace in downtown Boston across from Impact Hub that we partnered with CIC on to launch about 5 years ago. We do events that highlight food and innovation. We've got now all virtual programming thanks to COVID, which we can talk more about the evolution of the company and our work amidst the pandemic. But programming is such a key part of what we do, really driving connection in the space and getting people to meet others that can help support their business goals, and doing that through a lot of our programs. We have an annual conference with the Boston Globe on the Consulate of Canada called Food Edge, which seeks to raise the profile of New England as a major contributor to the future of food. And we bring a lot of the entrepreneurs that we know to speak at that conference and meet others that can work with them and support their goals, and others from particularly industry, nationally, internationally, that know about the work that's being done on behalf of these people in the region. And then, along the way of doing Branchfood, really felt like there was a, compelling opportunity to start investing in this space. And we're meeting a lot of entrepreneurs that were raising funding. Also, those entrepreneurs, I think, were attracted to our group and what we were doing because they met people that understood what they were doing. And, when you start talking about some of these startups in food, you're getting into the supply chain, you're getting into some areas that aren't as familiar. They're not all consumer brands, right? These are, kind of deeper industry innovation, and the understanding the value of what those people are doing, and the fact that they were raising money was kind of interesting because we thought, we might be able to play a role in that. And so partnered with my co-founder, Marcia Hooper, who's been in venture capital and private equity her whole career, to launch Branch Venture Group as an angel investment network to support entrepreneurs at a very early stage in their development. So we work as a community of folks that are investing and doing diligence and sourcing deals for investment. So it's where I spend a lot of my time today. Personally, I think my interests have evolved a little bit beyond community programming and development in terms of how I spend my day to day, and have focused more on the investment side of things for the last, I'd say probably 6 months or so. But it's been a wild ride. I feel like I wake up every day and I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen today? No 2 days are the same, but it keeps it exciting and interesting. And I think I feel very, very lucky to have found this, because I think I always knew I had a lot of energy for something. And I think, people come to entrepreneurship in all different ways, but ultimately that, that energy and that excitement and really the discipline of making your passion into work has been a really fulfilling experience.